Today on Week in Review, police are investigating a fatal motor collision in Haida. The Terrace RCMP recently dealt with several impaired investigations, and a couple of upcoming Terrace events are being done to help celebrate Earth Day. Hello, I'm Cael Maslin, and thank you for joining us here on Week in Review, where we cover all of the news here in the Northwest from this past week. Police are investigating after a male suffered fatal injuries in a motor vehicle collision in Haida. At 1:17 p.m. on April 22nd, the Dawson-Geeds RCMP say they received a report of a pedestrian-involved collision in the 200 block of Front Street in Skidegate. A vehicle reportedly struck the pedestrian, who later died from his injuries. The North District Major Crime Unit has taken control of the investigation and is traveling to the community. The Dawson-Geeds RCMP continued to remain on the scene and in the area. Staff Sergeant Chris Clark of the BC RCMP said that the investigation is in its infancy, but police believe that this was a targeted incident, with him adding that police are asking anyone with information to speak with the police rather than post to social media. Due to this incident, the Skidegate Band Council put out a resolution for a curfew on its members running from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., stating that the current crisis poses an existing or imminent threat to people and property, and that therefore the emergency situation requires prompt coordination of action. The band said the curfew will remain in place until a resolution is rescinded, and this past Friday, a 32-year-old Skidegate man was arrested in connection with the investigation. North District Major Crimes Unit maintains control of the investigation, and the Dawson-Geeds RCMP are making extra patrols to speak with community members and alleviate fares. As such, the members of the community should expect to see an increased police presence for the next few days. The Terrace RCMP recently put out a report that detailed them dealing with a fairly significant amount of impaired investigations in a recent weekend. One such investigation saw patrolling officers notice a GMC Sierra pickup truck swerve over the road's center line, and the officers then talked with the driver after the vehicle stopped at a local brew house. The driver admitted that they had had a couple of drinks, and after the man then provided some breath samples that resulted in fails, he was hit with a 90-day immediate roadside prohibition and a notice of a vehicle impoundment for 30 days. Another part of the report talked about how there was a man that was eventually determined to be impaired that was noticed urinating on the side of a liquor store. Next up is a look at a couple of major events being held in Terrace this weekend that are looking to help keep our planet green.
The now over half a century old event of Earth Day was officially celebrated earlier this week, but that doesn't mean that local people in the Northwest looking to make a difference and help clean up the planet can't do so. The city of Terrace allowed people to drop off their yard waste at the Public Works Department on April 22nd, and are letting people do that again in celebration of Earth Day this Saturday from 8:30 a.m. until 4 p.m., but the day after that one is when a more prominent cleaning-related event will be taking place.
Well, we're involved with the Earth Day Community Garbathon, and that's happening on Sunday, the 27th.
It's from noon to 4, and the muster point, or HQ, is at George Little Park.
The event, which also happens to be entering a milestone year, is being put on by the Greater Terrace Beautification Society, with some help from the likes of Skeena Wild, the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikeed, as well as the City of Terrace itself, with the tools needed to officially do the pickup work being provided by the organizers, as they hope to surpass the large amount of trash that they collected last year.
And we will have garbage bags and gloves there, as well as some information. There will be a big dumpster there for folks to fill, and there will also be a metal bin as well for metals.
It's actually our 40th year this year of celebrating this event, and last year we took over 4 tons of garbage to the landfill, to the transfer station, plus the metal. So it was a huge accomplishment last year, so hoping this year that we'll be able to collect more.
The collection area is not contained to George Little Park, as residents can go wherever they please to pick up garbage and then bring it back to the park and then give it to the organizers, with all participants getting a gift certificate relating to one of the event's sponsors and being entered into a draw to potentially win a prize. Volunteers will also be going to clean up the local riverbanks at 9 a.m. that same day, after also meeting at George Little Park so residents are welcome to join that as well, and more information about the event can be found on the Garbathon 2025 Facebook event page. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin.
Up next, training is underway to help prepare for the upcoming wildfire season. Welcome back. As wildfire season becomes imminent, preparations and training have been taken underway locally to help keep our community safe. CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews has more.
Captain Brent Daw of the Thornhill Fire Department says the department has been working with BC Wildfire and the Terrace Fire Department to train and prepare.
So Thornhill Fire Department, we're definitely prepared for every situation. So working in conjunction with Terrace Fire all the time, working in conjunction with BC Wildfire here in Terrace, we're prepared and ready to go at any time.
He says one of the key defenses available in our area is static water sources.
So some information that a lot of community members don't understand is there is a lot of static water that we have stationed all around our regional district and in our response area. So if a hydrant ends up not having the capabilities to keep up with the work that we're doing, we can pull from multiple water sources, whether that's a lake, a creek, even the static sources that we have buried underground that are 10,000 gallons each. So there's multiple stations for us to do that.
Captain Daw says conditions are looking dry this season.
You know, we're just going off of our basic knowledge that we've seen, that the drier conditions are starting earlier on in the season. And just from what we have seen is the fine fuels that are on that forest floor, they're just more receptive to that spark. So as soon as that first ignition is happening, the fires are just moving that much more quickly. So when you are going out there and camping is going to be starting, the backyard, you know, little pit fires and that sort of stuff, is just to be cautious of that. Be fire aware at all times, and that the dry conditions are here.
Daw says the department is always looking for suitable recruits.
Recruiting went actually fairly well. We did get 4 through the door. That being said, we're still recruiting nonstop. So I think we will be opening up another one here come very shortly. More members we can have, the better it is at the end of the day. So we're holding strong now, but could always use some more.
The District of Kitimat, like several other northwestern BC communities did not that long ago, has begun promoting what is known as their Business Facade Improvement Program. This program, which is being funded by the Northern Development Initiative Trust, will allow for local businesses to apply for funding that can cover some of the costs of exterior improvements. Any businesses to get approval to receive funding can get up to $5,000 in total, or cover up to 50% of their project's total cost. Features that are eligible to be improved by the program's funds include new siding, exterior lighting, building signage accessibility improvements, as well as a few others. People who are looking to learn more about this program can do so by going to the District of Kitimat's website. The BC Northern Real Estate Board recently released their report on how housing affordability indicators in the North were looking during 2024. The report's primary conclusion stated that compared to the Vancouver and Victoria regions, home ownership in the North is very affordable, as its aggregate housing affordability indicator sat at 34.6%, although that number is slightly down from the one in 2023. As for where the most affordable place to live in northern BC is, that continues to be Kitimat alongside Fort St. John, which has been the case for the past half-decade or so, while the least affordable northern community is currently 100 Mile House. 100 Mile House was also the only community to see its affordability worsen last year, while every other northern community measured by the board improved in that regard. After the break, a report breaks down the statistics emerging from the advanced polls. Welcome back. Now to a report that takes a look at the recent advanced polling that took place and what those numbers could end up meaning for the rapidly approaching federal election.
Prior to the official voting day that will take place next week, Elections Canada has estimated that around 7.3 million people used the advance polling that was available during the Easter long weekend to place their vote. And if those numbers stand during the agency's final verification, that would be a 25% increase from 5.8 million who went the advanced voting route in the previous 2021 election. As for why the advanced polls put up these record numbers in this election cycle, Some residents in the Northwest have pointed to a couple of reasons that may have happened.
I know a few people that did go, and they told me they went because they had very strong opinions and wanted to send a clear message.
And it was super easy, showed our license, and we were done. It was great.
But beyond the convenience of getting your vote in early, placing your say in who gets to be in charge of Canada seems more important than ever, considering how the political landscape is shaping out at the moment.
I'm almost 50 years old. I've been through a lot of elections. I think this is probably the most divided and important election we've ever seen. We're clearly divided, conservatives and liberals, and yeah, it's important to all of us.
And as far as what pressing issues people believe need to be addressed as soon as possible are, they mainly seem to revolve around one thing: money.
But I think our fiscal policy needs to be dealt with. How much money we're spending, making sure that we're making sure that things are that we can afford what we have and we don't drop it down to our grandkids and kids. So.
We need to fix our economy, and that includes housing, right? It's no point in us having jobs if there's no place to live. So housing and the economy, to me, are the most important things.
Next Monday is Election Day, and for people in our Pacific time zone, voting hours are between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin.
Out of all of the topics that have been frequently mentioned as issues that need fixing as soon as possible by the candidates running in the federal election, one crucial part of healthcare has seemingly been overlooked. This report looks into why that may be the case.
More than a fair few topics have been talked about quite frequently during this election cycle, with most of them being about money-based topics like the economy, the carbon tax, and the cost of living. Healthcare has been focused on as well, but one part of that subject that hasn't been discussed nearly as much is the problems facing disabled people, and incumbent NDP Skeena Bulkley Valley MP Taylor Bachrach recently gave his thoughts on that.
The reality is that the issues facing people with disabilities haven't been front and center in this election, and they should be. Cost of living is really the overarching issue that so many Canadians are dealing with. And people with disabilities struggle with the cost of living more than other Canadians. Our commitment, and this is a commitment that's in our platform, the NDP's commitment is to double the Canada Disability Benefit.
And on a similar note, something else that could end up of being great use to disabled people is Bill C-277, which is looking to institute a proper strategy on how to best help people who suffer from brain injuries, and is also a bill that the NDP is knowledgeable about.
That piece of legislation is a private member's bill that was brought forward by my colleague and good friend Alistair McGregor. It's so important. Canada doesn't have a national strategy for brain injuries, and yet there are thousands and thousands of people living with the effects of brain injury. And so it's been supported, this bill has been supported by all of the main advocacy groups. It's got broad support across Canada. And our hope is that it can be pushed forward. It didn't make it through to the final vote in this last parliament, but it's certainly going to be a priority when we come back after this election.
Taylor Bachrach also mentioned that his hope is that regardless of who wins the election, they will work with the NDP on getting this bill finalized and finally put that much-needed strategy into place. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin.
Vancouver police have rearrested a high-risk sex offender who went missing from his halfway house the previous Friday. They say that the 30-year-old offender had been granted statutory release just before the day he went missing. Police say he was convicted of multiple sexual assaults against strangers in 2022. The release on it said a Canada-wide warrant was issued for the man, who police say traveled to the downtown east side, where he violated the conditions of his release and took deliberate steps to avoid being found. Still to come, a pair of BC ridings might be up for grabs. Welcome back. Pollsters and political scientists have been watching closely in BC, and ridings that were long considered as safe are now suddenly up for grabs. Based on how BC votes are currently shaping out, two party leaders in Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May could potentially be in trouble.
At this Chemainus, BC mill, they're sawing logs and sweating bullets.
Not knowing if the tariff is on and off, the logistics of trying to get wood across the border has been brutal.
50,000 people in BC make their living in the forestry industry, an industry already in crisis. Now the tariff war is adding new urgency to adapt.
I'm off tomorrow to Vietnam and Cambodia and Malaysia to try and find new markets there as well. We have some existing markets. Can we improve them? It'll be tough, but you never know.
He says a reduction in government regulation is at the top of his federal election wish list in a province primed for change. Coming into this vote, a three-way split in BC, 14 Liberal seats, 14 Conservative, 12 NDP, plus 1 Green. But experts believe and polls show the NDP may be in trouble in Metro Vancouver, including Jagmeet Singh's Burnaby Central riding.
I think the future of the NDP is at stake here, and not only Mr. Singh's own seat, but a lot of his colleagues.
Mark Carney's Liberals and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives hope to capitalize. On Vancouver Island, where 6 of 7 seats are currently orange, experts say the Liberals are polling better than they have in decades.
You have to go back at least 75 years, I think, to see this kind of response for the Liberals on the West Coast.
Also hanging in the balance, the future of Green Party co-leader Elizabeth May, the Greens' first ever elected MP in 2011.
Given that we really see this extreme level of polarization and if you like, a focusing of support on either the Liberals or the Conservatives, I do think even in the case of Ms. May, we may see voters they're unwilling to vote for anyone but one of the two frontrunners.
Changing demographics have resulted in one party pulling relatively low in the riding in which their leader stands. Here's CTV's Sid Alexander with more from Burnaby Central.
It's time for government to start pinching pennies as well.
Revealing the Conservative Party of Canada's costed platform, Pierre Poilievre wants to cut the deficit by 70%. To get there, the plan relies on cuts, economic growth projections, and a new spending discipline law.
Going forward, every time a politician or bureaucrat comes up with an idea to spend more money, they will need to find the exact amount or more in savings.
The Conservative leader also committing to cut the oil and gas emissions cap and regulations around energy infrastructure.
Our numbers are prudent. Our plan is ambitious.
Mark Carney's plan boasts $130 billion in new spending, including for national defense and health care. For Alberta, dollars will go to high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary, improved Parks Canada responses for natural disasters, and extended railways for farmers. Spending, this former Bank of Canada governor defends.
Unlike Pierre Poilievre, I've actually managed economies before. I've actually managed budgets before.
What they've put out in the platform is a relatively meaningful increase in the size of the federal deficit.
This economist says the Liberal spending plan marks a departure from previous fiscal promises, adding Conservatives are committed to cuts.
They do have quite a bit more areas that they're targeting for spending reductions than the Liberal plan.
It almost seems like there's an Excel sheet with maybe 1 or 2 cells that are missing at the very end, and they're like, just throw this number in and we'll figure out how to create a narrative.
Moshe Lander questions the accounting in the plans, but with 7.3 million advanced ballots already cast, some question how much the math matters.
The early vote is an indication of interest in this election, but also a sense of enthusiasm for people that want change.
Canadians head to the polls Monday. Shaylan Skolsky, CTV News, Edmonton.
Changing demographics have resulted in one party pulling relatively low in the riding in which their leader stands. Here's CTV's Sid Alexander with more from Burnaby Central.
This is Burnaby Central, and at its heart, Metrotown, a dizzying, skyrocketing construction zone where towering condos are being built next to other giants. Brand new homes with brand new voters that candidates are desperate to reach.
What's your name?
Not the least of which is NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who is fighting to keep his seat in the newly formed riding.
And again, here in British Columbia, you've got the power to send New Democrats to Ottawa to fight for you.
Polls suggest he remains in third place, with Conservative James Yan and Liberal candidate Wade Chang well ahead.
And do you live in this riding?
I live right here in Metrotown.
Chang is a lawyer with an MBA from Oxford who moved to Canada from Taiwan when he was a teenager. he knows the race is close.
I don't really care about Jack Maslin. I care about my people, my residents here in the riding. So I see Jack Maslin as another candidate in this election, and that's it.
Historically, the NDP has done well in Burnaby. Singh won 3 times. Before that, Kennedy Stewart.
I'm door knocking. I recognize you from Central, right?
And Sven Robinson was victorious in 1979 and 6 more times after that. But the demographics have been changing significantly.
The people moving in aren't as low income, they aren't as working class as they used to be. They're generally more affluent. Generally for the NDP, the historical voting base has usually seen greater strength among those making below 50,000, those who are lower income, those who are working class.
We invited the Conservative candidate to be part of this story, but didn't hear back.
Let's do it inside.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Burnaby Central will likely see a lot of Singh before Election Day on Monday. He may be down, but well known, the leader of a party, a skilled campaigner, and an incumbent. His opponents, while new, have the backing of parties with strong polling numbers, and analysts say no one should be counted out. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Burnaby.
And as the world reacted following the Easter death of a beloved Pope here in Canada, the Pope is being remembered as both loving and fair. Here's CTV's Adrian Gabriel with a look at the Pope's legacy in Canada.
An Easter Monday Mass for the morning. Parishioners lined the pews of Catholic cathedrals across Canada to remember the people's Pope.
Probably the first time I ever had a few tears in my eyes when a Pope died.
Pope Francis's passing surprising even archbishops who, like many, witnessed him take part in the Vatican's Easter Sunday proceedings.
We knew that the Pope had made an appearance, so it sounded like he was on the mend.
The faithful now left to remember a Pope whose compassionate voice was heard around the world.
He wore his heart on his sleeve, and you could just tell that his heart bled for anybody that was suffering or in need.
In 2022, a delegation from Canada visited Pope Francis at the Vatican.
Just looking at the pictures at
Residential school survivor Linda Daniels was part of that delegation.
when I shook his hand and I looked into his eyes. When I said, feel my hurt, feel our pain. And he nodded.
Following that meeting, Pope Francis made the pilgrimage to Canada, where he issued an emotional apology for the role the Catholic Church played in the Indigenous residential school system.
To show his regret, to make amends for the evil of the Catholic Church's role in residential schools was incredibly impactful.
Though for some Indigenous leaders, it is a day of mixed emotions.
I'm still waiting, as many of us are, for the return of artifacts that are sitting in Rome.
And still, many Indigenous peoples also took the time to reflect and give thanks.
Thank you, Your Holiness, Pope Francis, for coming and meeting the survivors. Miigwech.
The Assembly of First Nations also releasing a brief statement, in part saying that Pope Francis opened up a new chapter of healing. He listened to us and he heard us.
That wraps up this week's edition of Week in Review. Make sure to tune in to our regular newscasts on Monday at 5, 6, 6:30, and 11 o'clock here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for tuning in and have a good weekend.